My name's Myles Himmelreich, and I'm going to talk to you guys today and share a little bit about my life story and talk to you guys about FASD. My mom, Shirley Powder, was born on a reserve in Colleen Lake, just past Edmonton, and she moved from there in her 20s to BC and Alberta and was moving all around. She ended up coming to Calgary when she was in her early 20s. She came here with her brother, and she's living in Calgary and was pretty much on the streets and was having a pretty rough life. So she was hanging out with people that weren't necessarily the best people to be hanging out with, and got caught up in a lot of things. She gave birth to two boys. First was Harry, and then a year after that was Mike. And then a couple of years after that, she gave birth to Terry. And then she also later on had two other daughters, Jennifer and Jessica. Within the first couple months of Terry being born, he was in the hospital with acute failure to thrive. He wasn't eating or drinking, pretty much just didn't want to be alive. Had a lot of ear infections and was quite sick. He was in and out of the hospital for the first few months and would return back home with Shirley. Social services became involved because they were worried about the children and how they were being taken care of. They started to apprehend the children and put them into foster homes, and then eventually returning the children back to Shirley. This happened quite frequently. At one point, the social worker came over for a home visit with Shirley and found that Harry and Mike were taking care of Terry. And so they apprehended the children again and put them into a foster home. And by this time, Terry himself had been in about 7 foster homes, and he was about only 2.5 years old. The social worker contacted a foster family in Calgary, Brian and Christine, and was speaking with Christine and said, "We have a young boy here who we'd like to know if you would like to care for him long term." And she said yes. Brian was still at work, so he didn't even know. So it was a bit of a surprise when he got home that there was another baby in the house. Brian and Christine had 2 of their own biological children and another child that they adopted who at the time had FAE, fetal alcohol effects. And so they were told that, Terry also had fetal alcohol effects from his mom drinking. They weren't told about all the problems and trouble that he had been through. He was only 2.5 years old, had already been through many different foster homes and was quite sick. And so being through all those foster homes in that short amount of time, Terry started to get attachment disorder, because it's a little hard to get attached to anybody if you're only with them for a week or two. And so it was a pretty rough life already starting for this young boy. After the Himmelreichs, Brian and Christine had Terry, for a few months, they decided that they wanted to adopt him. And so they went to court, and there was a court battle between the Himmelreichs and Terry's biological family. They felt that Terry should either return home to his mother or go live on the reserve with his family. They felt that he should be raised by his people, and that going to live with the Himmelreichs wasn't a good place because it was a white Mormon family, and he was a young native boy. So this continued on, and there's people from the reserve there. There's Brian, Christine, social workers, but the one person who wasn't there was Shirley, Terry's mom. Sometimes she had her boyfriend show up, and sometimes there was nobody. So a judge eventually decided that Brian and Christine were the best place for Terry to go live. And during that same time, Brian and Christine decided that to go with his new family, Terry needed a new name. So they asked him if he'd like to change his name, and he said yes. And they said, "What would you like it to be?" And he said He-Man, but that was already taken. So he said, "How about Smiles?" And that's how they came up with the name Myles. So my name was changed from Terry Powder to Myles Terrence Stefan Himmelreich. Moved into the Himmelreich home, and it was nice to actually have a home that, there's a mom, a dad, and a family that was there for more than a week or two. And so I was starting to settle down a bit, but it was still hard because you still have a lot of issues from all the stuff that I went through as a young child. Himmelreichs, like I said, were a Mormon family, and they had a lot of good church family values. So we did a lot of things together as a family, and that really helped for me to feel comfortable and kind of bring me in to their family. Like I said, they had 2 older children, Larissa and Carrie, their biological children, and then another child named Kathleen, who they adopted. They've fostered for over 30 years and have had over 70 children in and out of their home. We have 11 children in the family, and 9 of us are adopted. And all 9 that have been adopted have a disability: Down syndrome, myotonic dystrophy, FASD, many different disabilities. And so we grew up, just learning to work with each other, and not really realizing that, this child with special needs or anything like that. Is just learning to work with each other and pretty much just loving each other for what we could do. My family was very supportive and understanding, and I went to elementary school, and for me, elementary was just going and playing on the playground and having fun and spending time with friends. At an early age, probably about grade 1, they were starting to see signs of my learning disability. So I was doing a lot of tests for speech and hearing and spelling. And so by the end of grade 1, I went into the school counselor's office with my parents, and they explained to me that, we think it would be helpful for you if you did another year in grade 1. And I thought it was just because the teacher liked me so much. She wanted me for another year, so I was like, okay, sure, I'll stay for another year for her, So I was already thinking, at a young age, I already had the women, so this was a good thing. But so I continued on through elementary. About grade 3, I went into an LD class, learning disabilities class. And one of the classes that they had for the LD program was in a trailer next to the school. And so the kids would go into that trailer for their classes and stuff. And kids that don't understand other kids can start to make fun of them. And this was what was happening with the kids in the LD class. We were really getting made fun of and called little dummies and, stupid and stuff like that. And here kids could, see that we were different because we were going into a different class. So it made it quite difficult. And I still was, a bit of an aggressive child from what I'd been through. And so I tended to get into a lot of fights trying to stick up for myself or stick up for the other kids in my class. And I didn't realize that, you're not supposed to fight, it's a bad thing, because in my eyes I was just, trying to stand up for what I thought was, protecting myself or my friends. Continued on through school and still just thought that, I was just having fun and spending time with friends. But I was starting to, have problems with the schoolwork, and there was a lot of different tests that I was doing to help me with my learning and help work on ways to, figure out how I could better understand the schoolwork. I remember that my parents, Brian and Christina, taught us, all of us children were told, you're adopted, this is where your family is from, and this is the disability that you have. And so they explained it to us, which was good. They never hid anything from us or never lied to us. But at that time, like I said, it was called FAE. There's fetal alcohol effects and FAS, fetal alcohol syndrome. And because I didn't have the physical features as much, I was categorized as having FAE, fetal alcohol effects. So Brian and Christine, explained this to me that, you have what's called fetal alcohol effects, and this is what causes some of the problems for you with learning. And so I thought if I could remember what it was that I had, then maybe I could explain it to people, and and they would be able to understand me better. So one day while I was doing some schoolwork, the guidance counselor, she asked me, she said, so what do you think some of the problems are coming from, that you're you're not being able to understand some of this stuff. And I thought to myself that, okay, I know this. It's 3 letters. My mom said it the other day, and I was all excited because I was going to be able to explain it. I'm like, 3 letters. It was, I have PMS. But it wasn't that. It was FAE. But for me, that's all it was. It was 3 letters. It didn't really make sense to me what they meant or exactly how that was affecting my learning. I just couldn't put the 2 together. I continued on through elementary school, and I was just the funny, hyper kid all the time and stuff, and went into junior high. And junior high is pretty tough for anybody because you're trying to fit in. You want to be the cool guy or the pretty girl, and that's what I wanted. Well, not the pretty girl, but I wanted to be the cool guy. And so I just wanted to fit in. And here I was having problems fitting in with the kids, and I couldn't fit in the school, in the classroom either, because of the learning problems I was having. And so I started to really realize that things were different for me. I would hang out with friends outside of school, and I was starting to get known as the weird, funny guy. And it was hard because I do things that I didn't know why I did them, or act ways that I was like, why did I act like that or say that? And then I go to school, and I wouldn't be able to do the schoolwork. We'd work on a math problem for 2 hours in the LD class, and then I'd take the 15-minute walk home. And by the time I got home, I forgot how to do the problem solving that I'd worked on all day. And so I'd sit down with my dad, and he was an architect, so he was pretty good at math, and he'd explain to me that this is how you solve the problem. And he was explaining it a totally different way than my teacher explained to me for like those last 2 hours. So I didn't understand a word he was saying. So I couldn't do the schoolwork, and I'd get upset and frustrated and throw down the books and storm off to my room and say, I'm not doing this, it's stupid. And my dad and my mom would be upset and think, well, if you're not going to do it, then why are we trying to help you? And so I wouldn't do the schoolwork, and then I would take it back to school the next day, and the teacher had asked for me to turn in our homework, and I'd have nothing to turn in. And so I started getting labels. I started getting labeled as being lazy, and I didn't care. And it was a lot easier to start accepting those labels, because if I didn't accept those labels, I would have had to stand up in class and said, I'm not able to do this because part of my brain doesn't work for me to remember these things due to my mother, taking alcohol during her pregnancy. Like, what kid's going to stand up and say that? For me, if I were to stand up and say anything, I'd be standing up and saying I'm retarded, I'm stupid, and I can't do this work. And I didn't want to do that. So it was a lot easier to say, okay, yeah, I'm lazy and I don't care. I'll go with that if that's what you think. So I was having problems with that, but then at the same time too, I was starting to have problems with getting to school on time. It didn't matter how early I got up. If I got prepared the night before, I still was having problems getting there on time. And so I get to school, and I'd have to go to the office and get a late slip. And so I spent a lot of time in the office, whether it was for not doing my homework or for being late. There were some days I went straight to the office, and they'd say, what are you doing here? And I'd just say, thought I'd save everybody time and come here now. But it was hard, and I didn't know exactly what to do or how to make everything change or to fit in. That's all I really wanted to do was fit in. So I started to kind of act up as a class clown, and at least that way people thought he's just being funny and he doesn't care and he's just goofing around. And so I started doing that, and then one of the classes I had was social studies, and I was doing a Scantron test where you have to shade in A, B, C, D, and you put it in the machine. And the teacher at the time had the machine in the classroom. So you'd put it in, and every question that you got wrong, you'd hear a beep. And so we'd line up, and we'd put our sheets in, and I put mine in, and beep, 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 beep. And I'm like, oh, haha, and everyone's kind of laughing. I'm like, great. So I felt, pretty stupid. I was like, oh, I can't do this. I don't know how to do this. And so sometimes I didn't even get the test done in time because I couldn't read it properly or understand it. And even if I did, I still got a lot of it wrong. So I started to realize that you could shade in bad dad cab AC/DC, and so I started shading that in. And I told the other kids what I did, and so they thought it was pretty funny. And you know, not only was it funny, but I always got the test done in time, and sometimes I got a higher score by doing that. You know, so I was finding a way to kind of overshadow the fact that I was having these problems and not being able to understand it. I still was feeling, you know, really alone and not, you know, being able to explain, you know, the things I was going through. I would try to explain things to my parents, but I wouldn't fully be able to say it. Like I would say, well, I don't understand why I can't figure out the answer to the question, you know, and it's right there, but I just can't figure it out. And my parents would say, well, how are we supposed to know? You know, I don't know what you're asking. I'd say the answer. I don't know what the answer is, but I want to explain to them that I'm talking about math. You know, in my head, I said, I don't understand how to find the answer to the math question, but I wasn't able to verbalize it properly. So it was very hard for my parents to help and support me because I couldn't verbalize what I was thinking. And then it was hard for me because I was thinking it and getting frustrated because they weren't understanding me. And so it made it quite difficult at home when it came to schoolwork. And then at school, too, I'd be sitting at the desk, and the teacher would be at the front of the desk speaking, and you'd have the fluorescent lights on the tiles in the classroom, and they'd be flickering. And for me, they're tapping me on the shoulder saying, Myles, look at me, you know, and then you have somebody tapping their pen, and for me, it's very loud, and then somebody's walking up and down the hallway by the door that's in front of the classroom, and so they're distracting me, and so there's all this sensory stuff going on, you know, and then my clothes are bugging me, and I'd be looking straight at the teacher, and she'd say, so what's the answer? And I'd say, I don't know. And she'd say, well, you know, maybe if you paid attention or you're listening, then you would know. And as I've, you know, been doing these talks and stuff, I've been able to look back and understand, you know, this is why I didn't know. But at the time, I couldn't explain it, and I didn't understand why I would be able to look at her and not have any idea what she was talking about. And so I just sit there and kind of take it that, yeah, okay, I guess I don't know, and I guess I wasn't listening. And so it was hard in school and hard at home, not understanding or not knowing how to explain it to people what I was going through. But at the same time, too, it was hard for me. They say that FASD is the invisible disability, because when people look at someone with FASD, usually they can't see that that person has a disability. If somebody has a hearing disability, you can see a hearing aid. You know, somebody with vision impairments might have a seeing eye dog or a walking cane. And I don't have anything that, you know, says I have a disability. I couldn't figure out how to explain that to people because I couldn't figure it out for myself. When I looked in the mirror, I didn't see anything to say, yeah, you have a disability, this is why you can't learn and why you're struggling. You know, I just looked in the mirror and saw this really good-looking guy. And so it was hard for me to explain it. But the hard part also was sitting at home by myself in my room and trying to think, why do I do the things I do, and why can't I figure out the simplest things, and why can't I remember things? It just felt like there was something missing, you know, something that everyone else seemed to have that I didn't have. And I'm like, if I could figure out what that thing is, then maybe I could complete myself, and I would be able to figure it all out, and all this problems and disability that I have would go away, and I'd be okay. Like I said, my parents always explained to us children where we came from and a bit about our biological families and stuff. And I'd seen my two younger brothers a few times when I was younger in elementary school. And I remember that they lived on a farm, and we spent some time together. And I remember them asking me if they could call me Terry, because that's how they knew me as. And I was like, yeah, you know, and that felt really good to have these brothers. And I remember being so happy when I got to see them. And so I thought maybe, you know, if I get to meet my biological mom, Shirley, then maybe she can answer these questions for me and help me figure everything out. And so I remember I was sitting in my bedroom and kind of looking out the window, thinking to myself, what would I say to my mom? And I wrote this poem. It's called A Son's Plea. Mommy, keep me home today. Mommy, I don't want to go out and play. I'm not like the rest out there. I don't fit in. It's not fair. I may not be able to read or write. I may not be able to tell the difference between day and night. I laugh. I cry. I have hopes and dreams. Because I may be a little slower, nobody cares, or at least that's how it seems. Shelter me from this cruel world and hold me tight. Mommy, keep me safe and tell me I'll be all right. A mother's reply. My angel, I can't keep you sheltered from all the pain out there. It's like a horrible illness that floats through the air. I love you, my angel, so I must let you go. I love you, my angel, so I must let you grow. You very well may stumble along the way, and you'll find out that it's not always okay. My angel, I once made a mistake when you were but a baby inside of me, but I promise you I'll never make a mistake like that again, because I want you to be all you can be. I smile when I see you laugh. I cry when I see you sad. I thank God every day for you. My angel, you're the best I've ever had. Every angel has to work hard to get their wings. Every angel has to do very special and meaningful things. Your heart and determination are what helps replace the tears with a smile on my face. My angel, your wings will be the ones to raise this world to a better place. I continued on going through junior high, having some of the struggles I was having with the learning. But I started to realize there were some things that I was pretty good at, and that was doing sports and drama. And so I really enjoyed drama class because I could be myself, and I could be free, and I could act and have fun. And it came pretty easy to me. And then I also enjoyed doing sports because I felt, when I was running or playing basketball or volleyball, I was free, and there's nothing, to judge me, to say, well, you can't do it because you're not going to remember how to do this or do that, and it was something that just came naturally to me, so I felt good, and I felt, kind of empowered by these things because I was able to do them. And so I started going out for different teams like volleyball and basketball and track and field. But sometimes there was problems because I didn't get my schoolwork done. I wasn't able to go play at the games. And so because I didn't get the schoolwork done in the first period or the homework from the night before, 4 or 5 hours later after school, coach would be saying, you can't play tonight. And looking back, I can understand why. I can put the two together, but at the time I couldn't. It was, I did something here and I'm being punished over here now. It doesn't make sense. And for me, it was, you're taking away the one thing in me that makes me feel normal, and that I fit in. And it was hard because I'm like, this is the only time that I'm me and I can do good. And that was being taken away from me. And it was hard. So I continued on with doing the sports and the drama, and that seemed to really help, especially with my grades and stuff like that. I went through junior high and ended up graduating from there. And so I was really starting to, think that I don't know what I'm going to do in life or where I'm going to go. And, because grade 9, people are starting to talk about, I'm going to go to high school and then I'm going to go to this college or this university and stuff. And I didn't know. I just figured, just try to get through junior high and then try to get through high school. I didn't have any, major plans. I hoped to be in the NBA, but I knew that was a long shot, so I figured, we'll just see where life goes. But it was hard because I just didn't really see, all these dreams and visions that all these other kids seemed to have. So I continued on through junior high. And graduated from there, and I went on to the summer before high school, and I was playing basketball during that summer with some friends at the basketball courts by my house, and it was good because I was starting to feel pretty good about myself because I was playing with these guys, and like I said, I was pretty good at basketball, so I was fitting in, and that felt good. I didn't have any other the worries or problems that I'd had throughout that school year. And so I was enjoying myself. And there was a few guys on the basketball court that were talking about these new guys that just moved into the neighborhood and that they're pretty good. And so I was like, okay, well, we'll see, how good these guys are when they come on my court. And so they showed up, and one was 6'5" and the other was 6'4". And I was like, okay, well, so I decided, well, why don't I just become friends with them instead? So we started talking and hanging out and playing basketball together, and it was going good. I was enjoying having their friendship. One day they brought some friends with them from the reserve. They were from Saskatchewan. And they said, well, what we're going to do is have all the natives against the rest of you guys. And so we divided up, and everyone went to one side, and they went to the other, and I went over to the side where they were. And they said, oh, no, sorry, Myles. We're going to have the natives on this side. You can play on our team next time. And I said, oh, well, I am native. I'm Métis. I'm half French and half Cree. And they're like, oh, you're Cree? All right, well, come on in, brother. And so all of a sudden I'm their brother. I'm like, oh, okay, sure. So I was like, well, at least they're accepting me. This is good. So we started playing basketball more together and stuff. And they said, well, why don't you come over to our house? We just live a couple blocks away. And so I did, and went there, and we hung out for a couple days. And one weekend I was at their house, and they said, well, one of us just going up to the liquor store to get some beer. Do you want anything? And so I was like, oh, yeah, sure. I gave him $20. I said, oh, just get me whatever. And I'd never drank before. And so I was like, yeah, just get whatever. And so he came back, and he had a 2-liter cooler. And I took the 2-liter cooler and didn't ask for any change back because I didn't know how much it cost or whatever, and drank half of it and, passed out, and woke up a couple hours later and sat up, and they were still there drinking, playing card games and stuff, and they were laughing at me. They're like, hey, lightweight, and you don't drink much? And I was like, oh, I was just really tired. It was a long day. And they're like, yeah, sure. So I drank the other half of the bottle, and I must have been really tired because I passed out again. And so this was, the beginning of, what we started to do pretty much every day, drinking and playing basketball. And I went through that summer, and a lot of the weekends were partying and just drinking and stuff like that. And so I started to, come home late for my curfew, and started to get in fights with my parents, and felt, like a lot of kids do at that age, that they didn't know anything and I didn't need them. And they pulled the whole, if you're going to live under our house, and obey our rules and everything. And so we're getting in fights and arguments, and I really didn't care because I was being accepted, and these people cared about me, and they were my friends. And what do my parents know? They don't care about me. And so we came to a mutual agreement that I should leave home. So I moved out, and school had started up. And so I was going to grade 10. I was going to a school that concentrated a lot more on vocational stuff rather than academics. It did a lot of things with cars, like mechanics, and there's a daycare and hairdressing and art stuff there. And so I was doing pretty good with that stuff because I learned best hands-on by doing the things as I was going. So I was doing good there, and I had my friends, and so that was good. Kind of was losing touch with my family, but it didn't really matter because at least I had my friends. And one night I was out with one of my friends, and at that point I was just pretty much couch surfing. I didn't really have anywhere to live. I just had a bag of clothes and pretty much going from one place to another and not really staying anywhere. I was at a friend's house, and he came downstairs and he said, well, sorry, you can't stay here tonight. My mom doesn't want anyone spending the night. So he said, I'll sneak you out a sleeping bag though. So he brought me out this sleeping bag, and I went down the hill to the park, and it was winter time, and so I cleared off the snow and slept in the park that night. Got up the next day and dropped off the sleeping bag and went to school. Ended up getting sick. Who would have thought sleeping in snow would get you sick? But so I ended up getting sick, but continued on to that school for a little while, and eventually got called into the principal's office and was given this piece of paper from the principal explaining that I was being asked to leave the school because I hadn't paid for my school fees or my school books. And I couldn't pay for them because I wasn't working, because I was going to school. And obviously my parents weren't going to pay because I wasn't living at home. And so I thought, okay, well, great, now I can't go to school. And it was hard for me because it was the first time in school I was actually doing well. And I felt comfortable and I felt good because my grades were good and I was doing good in the classroom. And I was starting to make some friends at school. And here was other kids in that same school that, were doing drugs, were getting in fights with teachers, were drinking during class, and yet they got to stay in school. And here I was, pretty much homeless, getting to school every day, doing my work, but yet I was being asked to leave. And so I started to really feel that, what, I guess school isn't what I'm supposed to do. It's not going to work for me and I can't do it. I started to really think that whatever I would get close to something or, it would start to work, I'd lose it, and it's hard because that's all I wanted. I just wanted somebody to be there for me, somebody to care about me, somebody to love me. And it seemed like every time things would go good for a bit, I would lose it. So I started to get the attitude of I didn't care. I'm going to lose it eventually anyways, and life's not working out. I left school and I went on to get a few jobs. And I worked, one of the jobs was at a Little Caesars pizza place. And so I go in and I was doing pretty good there. I was making the pizza, so I'd roll out the dough and put on the toppings and spin it and drop it on the floor and dust it off and put it back and cook it up and but it was for me, it was the first time that I started to understand for myself that routine and repetition were the best things for me. If I did the same thing over and over, then I knew how to do it. And I started to realize that, but I didn't fully process it, and that's also too why I did good at sports, was because I knew how to do the certain same moves at basketball and stuff like this because I played it so much. But here for work, I was feeling good because I was working and I was getting money and stuff like that. So I was like, okay, this is good. And at the end of the nights, I would clean up and sweep and organize and stuff like that. And then they give me pizza to take with me. So I had some food, I had money, and I was just staying at different people's houses in their basements and stuff. And so it was okay. Ended up being asked to start taking phone orders for people that would make delivery calls. And so I'd get on the phone and they would ask, I want a large Hawaiian, and I started to have problems with it because there was a change in my routine, and I couldn't remember all the toppings or all the combos or the prices or, and then I had to remember the address, and it was a lot to remember. And so I wasn't able to understand it all. And again, looking back now, I wish I could have said, can we tape up the menu beside the phone, or can we do this different, or can I just stay in the back and make the pizza because somebody has to do it and somebody has to clean, and I don't mind doing that. But I didn't know how to ask for that at the time. So I kept messing up the orders, and my boss would get upset at me, and I'd feel, again, stupid that I couldn't do it. So I went home and I didn't show up for work for a couple days, and eventually my boss got hold of me at a friend's house that I was staying at and told me, you don't come into work today, don't bother coming back. And I figured, fine, I won't then. So I just didn't go back and didn't call him or anything like that. And again, it was a lot easier to take the label of being lazy and didn't care than be able to say, I'm too stupid to answer a phone. And I didn't want to face that. I just didn't want to admit to that because that's what I felt inside. By that time, I started to hear a little bit more about what FASD was, and I started to hear things like, you won't be able to maintain a job, finish school, have friends, live independently, and have a family and stuff like this. And I started to think that stuff was true because all those things that I had heard were coming to be for me. I didn't finish school, and I couldn't do work, but at least I had my friends. Continued on, drinking and partying with my friends, and it got to the point where I was drinking every day. I'd wake up in the morning, first thing I'd do is grab a beer, and drink throughout the whole day, and then at night, party with my friends and get drunk. But then it started to change. These friends that I hung out with, there would be days that they would call and say, hey, do you want to hang out? Why don't we bring over some beer? And I'd say, okay, and we'd hang out. And then they'd call the next day and say, hey, do you have any money? I'll bring over some beer. And I'd say, oh, no, I don't have any money, but do you want to hang out? Actually, no, I'm kind of busy. And started to, go to the point where I was just their friend if I had alcohol. If I bought the alcohol over, then I could hang out with them. A lot of the people I was hanging out with at the time were having struggles in their own lives, with their own parents and their families in school and stuff like that. And a lot of them weren't in school anymore. And so there was this house that we all started kind of hanging out at and staying in the basement there. And and they started, a few of them started to do drugs, get into smoking pot and everything. And I tried pot, but I didn't like it. I was like, oh, it just makes me quiet, and I don't talk that much. My friends liked me doing it, but because I was quiet and didn't talk that much. But I was just like, oh, it's nothing that I really enjoy or whatever. And so I would just drink a lot, and started to get to a point where I was drinking by myself, and I drink all day. And then I started to try to attend a few different life skills programs, and they'd go good for a while. Usually they're 3 to 6 months long, and I do okay at it. And then I'd finish the program, and try to go get a job, and wouldn't work, or I'd try to do something, but it always seemed to fail. And I couldn't understand it, and I, again, was still not really caring why. I just figured, I just can't do this, and it's not going to work. I said earlier that I had always, thought that finding my family, might be the thing that would help me if I could talk to my mom and stuff. And so when I was 18, I started thinking about finding my family and hopefully, be able to connect with them. And so it took about a year of working with the adoption agency and doing all this paperwork and stuff. And finally, one of the workers that I had through Native Services suggested that I write a little blurb in the newspaper saying, this is who I was, this is who I'm looking for. And so I did that. And about a week later, I received a call. And it was my brother Harry, who was in Lethbridge. And he said that he had just finished attending an AA meeting and was in a coffee shop reading the paper, and he'd come across the article. And so we were talking, and I was excited, I was pretty happy. He said to me that, why don't I come to Calgary and we can meet up and spend some time together? And I said, yeah, that sounds great. So he called a day or two later, and he said, sorry, I wasn't able to get on the bus, I ended up partying. And I was like, well, that AA class must have went really well, didn't it? But, so I was like, okay, well, that's fine. He said, but, I'll get on the bus tomorrow, and, I'll head down to Calgary, and we can spend some time together. I said, okay. So again, call a day or two later, same story. Sorry, missed my bus, I was partying. And this continued on for a little while, and eventually he called, and he said, yeah, sorry, but tomorrow I'm coming. I said, don't worry about it. He said, what, you don't want me to come? And I said, yeah, I do, but I bought the ticket, I'm going to come to Lethbridge and see you. And I was all excited. Like I said, with all the struggles and everything I had going on growing up, I always just wanted somebody to love me. I felt that if I could find that thing to, fix me, it would be great. And I thought, well, maybe this is it. Maybe finding my family will be the one thing that'll change everything. And growing up, I'd always had a picture of going up these apartment stairs, turning to the right, going in the door, and there'd be my mom, my dad, my 2 brothers, and my 2 little sisters I knew of, and there'd be a spot in the middle, and I'd go stand in that spot and, be like ready for the picture to be taken, and everything would be great. And I'd always had this picture in my head. So that day when I was talking to my brother and I said, I'm coming to Lethbridge to see you, he told me, he's like, oh, that'll be great. I said, we can talk about the family and stuff. He's like, yeah, no, it'll be good. And I was 19 at the time, and I'd had this picture in my head for about 16 or so years. And he said to me, he's like, yeah, we can talk about the family. He's like, well, your mom's dead and your dad got killed in jail. I said, what? I said, yeah, your mom's dead and your dad got killed in jail. And I said, oh, okay. I said, well, I guess I'll see you tomorrow. And he's like, all right, see ya. And I hung up the phone, and I didn't know how to take it. It was 16 years, or so of this dream, and all these years of thinking this was going to be the thing that was going to change it and fix it all was now gone, and so I went over to my friend's house and I got drunk and caught the bus the next morning and went to Lethbridge and met my brother. And I just hung out in Lethbridge and partied all the time. That's all we did. I ended up meeting one of my other brothers, and he had huge addiction issues also. And so, we'd spend some time together, but it wouldn't be very long. It'd only be 10 minutes into hanging out together, and he'd ask me for money. And if I didn't have money, he had some reason or some excuse that he had to leave. And he did this even the first time we met. He left within the first half hour because I didn't have $20 to give him. And so it was hard because when I was working with the adoption agencies and trying to find my family and stuff, nobody ever told me that it may not be as great and wonderful and, butterflies and rainbows like you think it's going to be. I just figured that I'd find my family, and because we're family, you'd automatically come together. And I didn't realize that, they had been through stuff and they'd grown up different. So that was going to make it harder for us to come together. And end up finding a few other brothers and sisters that I didn't know I had. And to date, we have, I believe, 9 or 10 siblings that I didn't know about. And so it was a pretty big family. So over the next couple of years, I met some of the family, and we'd all been split up at a young age. The two brothers grew up with my mom and, got into addiction issues at a very, very young age. And my two sisters, one was taken out of town, the other one was raised in foster homes, and some were raised in BC, Edmonton, all over Canada. And so we eventually started to come together and meet each other. But again, it was hard because we just didn't click. And some of them, unfortunately, don't have contact with each other anymore. I'm still in contact with most of them, but there's a few I haven't seen in about 3 or 4 years. They're living on the streets. We don't know where they are. So it makes it hard. It makes it difficult because this is supposed to be your family. I continued on, being with my so-called friends and meeting my family. And one night when I was with my friends, we were in their basement, we're drinking, and I remember thinking to myself that, I'm going to do something big. I'm going to change the world, and I just remember thinking this and having this feeling inside me, but I couldn't tell that to anybody, because if I'd stood up then and said, I'm going to change the world, they would have said, yeah, cheers, change the world, whatever. Nobody would have believed it because I myself couldn't believe it at the time. I was like, I can't even keep a job. How am I going to do something big or do something great? And so I had a lot of self-doubt. And it was weird because during that time too, I started to, again, kind of be like when I was a little baby with the whole acute failure to thrive. I didn't want to live. I couldn't understand any purpose to why I was alive. And it was such a battle inside myself that you're going to do something big, but yet you can't do anything at all, and I was like, it just doesn't make sense why I'm here. I was in and out of quite a few relationships with girls throughout those years, and a lot of times it was girls that I'd met at the house parties. And so I thought, if I meet a girl, then she's going to pick me up and change my life, and everything will be great, and she'll love me and care for me, and because that's what I want, and that's what I need, is somebody to love me. And of course, these girls I was picking up at the parties a lot of times had the same issues and had the same thought process of, I'm going to meet some guy, he's going to love me and, pick me up and change my life and everything. And, if you have all these struggles and these two people meet, it doesn't work out. It wasn't, got into a lot of arguments and just relationships were bad. And, the only thing we could do together was drink, and that can only last for so long. So a lot of times relationships weren't too good or very fun at all. I had at one point a girlfriend, and she ended up getting pregnant, and I thought the child was mine. Ended up that the child wasn't mine, but I was so happy thinking that maybe I was going to have a baby, and that was going to, I'd have a baby to love me, and again, it was another time of me just reaching out saying, okay, somebody's got to love me. I need somebody to love me. I knew that Brian and Christine and the Himmelreich family, Brian and Christine, who I take as my parents, that's my mom and dad, I knew they loved me, but at the time, they weren't there and they couldn't be there for me. I'd go back home and they'd, have Sunday dinner for me and stuff like that. And then there'd be other nights I'd go there and I'd say, can I just spend the night in the basement? And they said, no, you can't stay here, and it was hard because I felt like they were, stepping away from me, and it hurt because I'm like, I just need you to grab my hand and just hold me for a little bit, and it just felt like they weren't. But I wasn't able to explain that to them. That's what I needed. So I continued on with these friends, and one night I was speaking with my brother, and he said, why don't you move to BC with me? And at the time, he had gone to jail, and I was going to start a job out at a YMCA camp working with kids. And he said, well, at the end of the summer, why don't you move to BC and we'll get a place together? I said, okay. And he said, I'll be out by then. And I was like, okay. So I went off to the camp, and he ended up, finishing his sentence and went out to BC. And the camp was good. I was working with kids, and that was something that I was pretty good at from working with all the kids that I'd had growing up in the family with my Brian and Christine. And so I was feeling good, but I was still having a lot of struggles, with alcohol and feeling depressed and, alone and everything. So I ended up, not doing too good at the job because of those outside problems. And so ended up going to BC with my brother, and I stayed there for about 8 months or so, and the whole time just pretty much partied. Didn't really work, didn't really do anything, was on government assistance, and just partied, and my brother sold drugs, and I didn't really do anything much at all. So I ended up moving back to Calgary, and was feeling, this is not good. I'm not going anywhere in life, and just nothing's working for me. So I moved back to Calgary, and kind of met up with some of those friends again, but starting to really realize that these people weren't my friends. These were the same people that had at one point not jumped me, but we went to a gas station to get some stuff, and they had asked me to get some cigarettes, and I didn't have any money on me. So they didn't believe me, and I said, I don't have any money. So one of them kicked me in the leg, and I fell, and then they started kicking me in the face. And I don't know how long it went on for, but I woke up a little while later and dragged myself into the store, and I was covered in blood, and it was all black and blue. And my girlfriend was working at the store at the time, and so we went back into my house where we were living across the street. And she started cleaning me up and stuff, and I grabbed a beer, and she's like, well, why don't you call the police? I said, no. And I went to one of my other brother's house who was living here in Calgary, and he said, do you know who did it? And I said, no, I don't know. They just jumped me, and I don't know who it was. And hung out with him for the day and drank with him. And then about 2 days later, I was back over at those people's houses drinking with them. The same guy that was kicking me in the face with his steel-toe boots, I was sitting beside him having drinks. Also the same guys that had robbed me when I passed out once for $500 or $600. and I knew it was them. I knew they were doing this stuff, but I so badly wanted to be feeling accepted and fit in that I tried to look past all this stuff. That at least if they're sitting with me right now, then they're letting me be accepted, even though they do all this stuff to me. And so I'd moved back to Calgary, and I went into another life skills program and thought, I'll give it a shot, see what happens. And so I was doing the program, and it was a pre-employment program. We learned about resumes and stuff. And so I was trying to, get there on time and, really try to do good at the program. And at the same time, too, I decided I needed to kind of distance myself from this group of people and not, be around them, because I knew they weren't my friends. And I knew that I needed to stop drinking because I wasn't happy with my life. And as we know, alcohol is a depressant. So I wasn't helping sitting at home drinking by myself, listening to Celine Dion. It's not going to make anybody happy. But so I figured, I need to make these changes. And so I started making the changes by going to this life skills program and by, starting to not drink. And it was hard because it was hard to go home, at night and not want to go out, because I'd been out every night for years and years, going out and partying and doing this stuff. And so it was hard to, stay at this place that I had got, this basement suite with this roommate and everything. And it's hard to stay there and not want to go out. And on the weekends, I would, say to myself, okay, I'll go out for just one drink. And, but it turned into being one after another after another. It was never just one drink, because I couldn't do it at the time. And so I was still going to the program, and that was going good. And I was starting to distance myself from these people, and so that was going good. And I ended up doing the program, I think it was about 6 months long, and I graduated it. As the first thing that, as a full program, that I had fully attended and graduated. So I felt pretty good about myself. I was like, wow, I'm doing this. And so I went from there on to get a job. I was volunteering for about a week at a leisure center, and they asked, would you like to work here? And I said, sure. So I started working in the daycare, and then I started teaching a preschool class, and then I was coaching kids sports as well as doing birthday parties on the weekends. And so I thought, well, this is going pretty good. I've got this job and feeling pretty good, and I'm getting, my drinking under control. And I started to fill my weekends with going and playing sports, because I realized that sports were a healthy outlet for me, and I was making healthy friends there, and so I was finding, this stuff to, help my life turn around into a positive way. And so I was thinking, okay, this is good. So then I figured, I'm going to get my own place now. And I'd never really done that, but I had the money to do it. So I thought, okay, well, I'll give it a shot. And still at this time, I had people in my life that, did care for me, but were saying, I don't know if you're going to be able to live independently, and, maybe you should apply for AISH just in case this whole job thing doesn't work out. And, so I figured, well, I'll give it a shot. If it doesn't work out and they're right, then no big deal. Same story of my life all the time. But if it works out, how much more awesome is that going to be? So I got my own place, and things were going good. And I seen a counselor around that time, and he said, you must feel happy with everything going as good as it is. I said, well, yeah, it's going okay for now, And I said, I'm just kind of waiting for the other shoe to fall off. He said, well, what do you mean by that? I said, because it always does. It doesn't matter what happens in my life, it ends up going bad. I said that I have a fear of heights, in the fact that I'm literally scared of heights, but also heights of success. And he's like, well, that doesn't make any sense to be scared to succeed. And I said, for me, I would do something good, like I graduated, this program, and now here I've got this job, and I've got my own place, and I'm cleaning up on my drinking, I'm getting good friends, and so I'm building myself up this much higher. But up to this point, I've had this family, I've lost this family, I was going to school, I failed in school, I had these friends, I lost these friends, and every time I got up a little bit, I fell. So I said, can you imagine how much farther down I have to fall now because I'm this much higher up? And he said, you really need to enjoy where you're at. And I couldn't stand back and go, doing good, we're going to keep doing good. I was instead going, oh man, this is scary, and it was really, really hard and scary for me, but I started to try to, appreciate some of the steps I'd done. And I would go to my place and I'd go out for a walk at, 1 in the morning and, go back to my house and I'd be like, wow, this is awesome. I have my own place that I can go to, and it's my place, and I have a bed and I have food, and I started to collect movies and magazines and stuff, and I started, when I get home, I'd be able to sit down and turn on my TV and put in a movie, and I saw these movies that I had and these books and stuff, and I'd sit down on my couch and look and be like, this used to all be alcohol. This used to be all, beer bottles and stuff. But now it's stuff that's always going to be there, and I can see it, and and I felt good, and I was like, wow, this is a good feeling. So I continued on working at the leisure center, and I still, was having some, slips here and there, but not to the point where they used to be. It wasn't going and drinking for 3, 4, 5, 6 days. I'd drink for 1 or 2 days on the weekend, and I'd be like, okay, we got to work on Monday, so let's stop here. While I was working there, I was working with this lady on doing my income taxes, and we were talking. She said, well, I heard from this other person that you have FASD. And I said, yeah. And she said, would you mind coming to a conference that I'm running and share your life of living with FASD? And I said, sure, yeah, I'll do that. So, a couple weeks before, I started writing everything I want to say and how I want to present it, and so I stood up. I went to the conference. I stood up, and it was a crowd of about 100 or so people, and I was pretty nervous. I was looking around like, oh, I don't know if I can do this. So I looked down at the paper and I started reading it word for word. My name's Myles, Himmelreich. I was, word for word, everything, and I got a little way through, and I looked up and, just kind of pushed the paper to the side and started talking because I realized this was my life. I knew what I wanted to say, and even though I didn't know exactly what I was going to say word for word or how I was going to say it, it came out. And I did the talk, and it went really well. And after the talk, I had all these feelings. I was excited, and I was happy, and I didn't know how to explain these feelings. But I was just like, wow, this is really quite awesome. A lady came up to me after the talk and said, we're running a program at the university starting up in the next month or so. Would you be interested in coming? It's for 16, 24-year-olds with FASD, and we'd like you to be a mentor. And I thought, okay, yeah, sure, I'll do that. And she's like, we'll pay you to come once or twice a week. And I thought, okay, sure, I'll get paid to sit down with these kids and have coffee. Yeah, okay. And that's all I thought it was at the time. I was like, okay, just sit and have coffee and listen to them, and maybe give them some advice, whatever. I didn't really think, much about it or what I would do. But I was like, okay, yeah, I can do that. So I was working at the leisure center and then working there a couple days a week. And I started, speaking with these young adults and kids about, this is what I've been through, this is how I felt, and here I am now doing this, and as I was sharing the stories of the struggles I had in school and the problems I had with my friends, I could see in their eyes that they're like, yeah, that's it. And then they would start sharing things too of, that's where I'm at right now, is I'm on the streets living with these people in the park, and they'd shout me for my money, and but I know I'm going to go hang out with them again today because that's all I have. And so I was able to share some of the stuff I'd went through, and they were able to relate to it. And I continued on doing that program and really started to see the difference that it was making in their lives for me being there, but also for myself, because I was learning from them that it was a process that I'd been through to get to where I was, and I didn't ever really able to stand back and say, okay, look where I am now because of what I went through. It was all just happening and happening. And so working with them, I was like, wow, you know, it was helping me a lot too, you know, to see that, you know, I had been through a lot. And I went back to see that counselor that I'd seen a couple of years previous. I said, I just wanted to let you know how things are going, and you know, I'm feeling really good about everything, and this is where I am, and I want to say thank you for all your help. And he said, you know, whatever happened with that other shoe falling off? And I said, you know, the laces came loose, but the shoe never fell off. And I was like, there was times that, you know, I had bumps in the road, and I just had to tie the laces back up and keep going, because that happens for everybody. You know, it's not an easy, smooth path for anybody. And I realized this stuff, and he's like, wow, okay, well, that's good. I'm glad to hear that you're doing well. And so I continued working with these kids, and I ended up going to New Zealand to visit some family, and came back to Calgary and I was asked to be the facilitator of the program. And so I was doing that. And then I was also doing the public speaking. And that started to pick up more and more. Because as I do it, people at that conference would ask me to come do this conference. And so it was really starting to pick up, and I was feeling really good about it. And I started to realize that, you know, the thing that I felt inside me that first time I did it was that thing I felt in that basement all those years ago, where I said, I'm going to do something big to help change this world. And that's what it was that I was speaking to people and, you know, helping them understand things a bit better, and helping them, you know, see things through a different light. And I was like, wow, this is really happening. And so I continued on working with these kids and facilitating the program, and I started to realize that I just wanted to be loved. I just wanted somebody to be there. You know, I lost my biological parents. I felt that, you know, there had been a distance between my adoptive parents. I felt that I didn't have friends, you know, I didn't have relationships. I just didn't have somebody there, you know, and I felt I always needed somebody else to love me. And as I was doing these things, I started to realize that, you know, look at what you've been through. You know, you've been able to work on your addiction issues, you've been able to work on homelessness, you've been able to work on all this stuff, you know, to still be alive and have the strength to do what you're doing. And I started to realize that I loved who I was, and I loved what I was doing. And that was it. I was like, wow, I have to love myself before I can let anyone else love me. I was so scared of people coming in my life and leaving, because it happened so much, that those people that did love me, I was pushing them away. You know, as much as Brian and Christine loved me, I was pushing them away and not letting them love me. And, you know, so I started to realize that I needed to love myself and be open and understanding to let other people love me. And so I continued on doing the public speaking, and then I went on to continue doing the program. We moved out into the community to a different agency, and then there was financial problems there, so that agency ended up closing down, and I went into another agency. And currently I'm the only person left in the program since it started, but I'm still doing the mentoring, and I'm still doing the public speaking and the public awareness. And that's the biggest thing for me, is the mentoring. To realize that I'm helping other people. And those kids that I helped, it's probably about 4 or 5 years ago now, when it started, I still talk to some of them like once, twice a month, you know, and I was sitting back the other day, and I thought there's a reason behind that. Obviously there's some impact or something that has helped them, you know, and being able to help them, you know, means that they can now help other people. You know, it's the whole domino effect of trying to touch other people's lives to, you know, better society. You know, and I was feeling good about it. We're told in life that, you know, there's certain steps you take. You're born, you go to school, you go to college, you get a career, have a family, and these are steps you're supposed to take. But if somebody else, you know, ventures out and takes different steps or goes along a different path, a lot of times we get scared for that person, and we feel that they're not going to succeed, or they're not going to make it, you know. And I didn't finish school, and I didn't go to university, I didn't do this typical path that people thought I was supposed to do, you know, and so they were scared for me and they were worried for me, and I was scared and worried for myself because I knew that I wasn't doing this path that I was told that I was supposed to do, you know, and so I've come to realize now that I took my own path, and at the end of the day, I'm going to get my own reward. You know, I've been able to become a lot stronger from going down the path that I've done. I've spoken to crowds of 500, 600, 700 people, talked to doctors, psychologists, teachers, parents, you know, traveled all over Canada speaking. But that's only because I've been through all this stuff. If I didn't have the strength to get through everything I went through, I wouldn't have the strength to stand up and talk to people. You know, like this wouldn't be where I am in life. You know, so I embrace what I've been through. I would never ever take anything back that I've done or that I've been through. I always thought that, you know, I needed to reach that one point in my life that it was going to change everything, you know, and people ask me that. They say, you know, when did it all change? And I can't say there was one specific time that it all changed or one specific moment that it all changed. I think that nothing changed. I think what I found inside was that there wasn't a need for a change. I didn't need to change something to get loved. I didn't need to change who I was to get loved. I needed to love myself to get loved, you know, and I've realized with the kids that I'm working with, I don't work with them and teach them, you know, what's 5 times 5. You know, we work together on things like, okay, so how are we going to solve this problem, or how do you think we can best understand how for you to do your budgeting? You know, is it you're going to pay your bills on the same day every day of the month? You know, because that's what works for me, is that, again, I've learned the routine of repetition. I need to pay my bills on the same day of every month. I need to pay the rent on the same day. You know, I need to go grocery shopping. I get the same, you know, things where I grocery shop, gummy bears and chocolate milk, you know, but it's doing the same thing because I've learned this is what works for me, you know, and not being ashamed and being like, oh, I have a disability and that's it. You know, I'm able to say, yes, I have a disability, but I've learned what I need to do to work with this disability, and I embrace it. I'm not scared of it. I'm not ashamed of it. Nothing like that. There was an article in the paper that was written up. I was asked to go to Edmonton and introduce the Minister of Children's Services for some funding that was coming to the province of Alberta. And so I went there, and I was quite nervous because as the minister, and also they wanted me to say certain things. It wasn't just, you know, say whatever. And so, of course, I put my own little touch in it and had a few jokes and stuff, but it went well. And there was a few articles that were done up. One that was done up in Edmonton and one in here in Calgary that I saw. And one of the articles here says, Myles Himmelreich, who suffers from the effects of fetal alcohol syndrome, says a provincial program to establish regional authorities for its disorder will help victims get help earlier. And then the heading here says, fetal alcohol treatment efforts greeted by victims experts. I have never and will never be a victim. I am not a victim, and I don't suffer. I have FASD, but I am not FASD. And I've understood that, and I've embraced that, and I'm hoping that that's the message that I'm getting out to people, is it's not a matter of if you have a disability or not. It's embracing who you are. And when I'm working with these kids, like I said, it's working on what they need, you know, and understanding that if, you know, say a teacher can't teach that kid, you know, what 5 + 5 is, but at the end of the school year, that kid gives the teacher a hug and says, I love you and thank you, then sometimes that can be enough. You know, I went and took some tests a while ago for the stuff that I was doing, and some of my grade levels were grade 6 because I hadn't done them so long and because my memory isn't so great. but that's not what defines who I am. What defines who I am is what I do and how I do it, and that's with my heart. I wanted to, find out who I was, and I was looking so hard to figure it out that I always just thought I was just an empty glass, and needed somebody to come fulfill me. And I realized that it was myself embracing what I'd been through and, taking it to help change myself. And once I did that and filled myself with that, then I'd find who I was. And I think that we can all do that. Find out who we are and find the real person inside ourselves. And that's what I was able to do. I don't know where my life's going to take me from here. I certainly never planned to be where I am. I never woke up and thought, I'm going to be a motivational speaker and I'm going to travel around doing this stuff, But I am so glad to be where I am. I'm so glad to have the opportunities that I have. And I'm so glad to be able to work with people. I've done many speaking engagements, but when I've had people come up and I've had doctors and stuff come up and say thank you, and I mean, that means a lot to me. But I've had youth come up to me and say thank you. I've had youth come up to me and say, I have FASD too. And they have a smile on their face. That has shown me that is why I'm here, why I'm doing what I'm doing, is because now they are able to understand this and be able to be like, okay, so this is who I am. And that's what it's all about, is realizing and recognizing who you are and saying, okay, so what do I need to do to keep on going, to be the best person I can be? And so I'm very glad to have the opportunity to come speak here today. And hopefully you're able to take something from it. Thank you.